How's it going, YouTube? Coach, and today with another video. And today, guys, what I bring to you is a complete guide to Ishizu tier. Now, this deck is very dominant in the format right now, so we're going to be going over a lot of different ways that you can go ahead and counter this deck, different ways that you can play the deck, different intricate play lines, as well as my list from the regional yesterday. And then we'll also go over different cards I feel like are mandatory and optional in the deck, and then finally talking about different ways that you can go ahead and get ahead in the mirror, because that's going to be your most important matchup. The Flunderies matchup is going to be the other one that you really got to be worried about, but I'll talk about that in deck building and how you can really mitigate that as well. So I do hope that you enjoyed today's video. If you haven't already checked out my sponsors of an Imperium Duelist, Dragon Shield, or Gem, definitely go ahead and do so down in the description below. And if you haven't already heard, I'm giving away this amazing Spellground once we hit 16,000 subscribers. It's the Player's Choice collaboration, so definitely go ahead and hit that sub button. And without further ado, top running into our first topic. So the first thing that I want to talk about today are going to be cards that I find mandatory in the mirror match. Zeus being such a reliable board clear is so important, especially the fact that you can go Dweller into Zeus is absolutely insane. You cut off the searches from the opponent's Soliix, the opponent's Screams, all your opponent's Rukalos and Kaleido Hearts can't come back. That's another thing that's just huge. I really do like the lines for Zeus, especially against Rogue, because you can summon Baguska in attack mode, and your opponent cannot target it with card effects nor destroy it with card effects, so there's not a whole lot that you're worried about, and Zeus is more than likely coming down, which is nuts. That's another way that I really like to go about the turn, especially if you're playing the mirror match, and most of your opponent's cards have already been used that turn, as far as their card effects go, especially like a Rukalos already being able to send itself, so at that point you can just go ahead and just make the Baguska so you can't get popped with like Perlerino, attack, and then go for the Zeus play, which is really cool too. I was able to do that at the tournament with a tactics. I saw a Dweller, just attacked with the Dweller and then overlaid for Zeus and then just wiped the board. So just overall a very strong card and something that will really win you the game, especially if you're clearing 5 or 6 cards at one time and then normal summoning Rhino behind it, because that's what I did and that felt amazing. The other one's going to be Talents. Talents is really important. It's mostly just the effect to take that's going to be the best thing that you can do with this card, especially being able to take the Rukalos, so you can go ahead and like negate one name and then Bystial the other. You can also just steal Dwellers. You can take Kitkalos. So Kitkalos is actually really crazy to steal, especially if all 3 of your names are already used, like you got Bystial, you got Keldo, what have you. You can actually just link off their Kitkalos and then bring it back with Dark and then get that search. So essentially you like fusion without fusion summoning, which is kind of nuts. You just get the free value. Obviously don't use a second effect so your opponent gets a mill 5, but it's still one of those things that afterward you can just go into like a free elf, and then if you have a Merly in your grave for the next turn, then you're able to just go ahead and pop off that much further. Just really cool play lines that you can do from that. But Talents overall just overperformed. Every single time I saw it, it just won me the game. It's just such a strong card. Being able to take any of the names is just actually crazy, because even if you take a 4, it's just such an easy way to make your own Dweller right away and then be able to shut that matchup down even further. So just make sure that you're on Talents somewhere in your main deck or your sideboard. The other thing is going to be talking more so about Agido. Agido is really cool, but a lot of people are really wondering like what the correct ratio of running Agido is going to be. A lot of people are running 3. I run 1. I think that it's just really important to side this card out in the mirror match, because there's not really a time that I want my opponent and myself to mill 5 unless I'm in a really bad situation, or if I'm going second into the mirror match, because of the fact that at that point, if they're milling, I'm just going to make myself mill with things like the Agido and the Kelbex, because any mill that you do going second is just free. You already know that you're going to get Dwellered, so at that point you might as well mill as much as you can. So getting the Soliix search, the Scream search, and then drawing for turn when you're going second, you start with like 7 or 8 cards. It just puts you in such a good position, because especially if you can just clear the Dweller, you have so many things you can go ahead and set up afterward that is just really nice to be able to get the free advantages here. So setting out Agido in the mirror match, definitely fine. I used it against Flunderies yesterday, and then I was able to make my opponent mill their Barrier statue, and it was just so nice after that, because I didn't have to worry about a statue, and the matchup went pretty good in my favor. So the Agido, very strong, especially making rogue decks mill their deck, but at that same point in the mirror match, I really just don't want to see both of us have to mill 5. The next thing I want to talk about today are going to be one of each trap. I think this is just the correct number. This is just so important too, because the Solic is just always getting pitched off of like Rhino effect, or I'm just hoping to mill it so I can get the free searches of things like Havness. But of course you want to see crime in your opening hand as much as possible, but you're almost always searching this with Kit. If you see it, then you're probably just searching a Merly or something else that can be really effective later on, like a Heartbeat. But at the same point, I think that you just run one of each. You can also recycle these with the Keldo and the Medora in the graveyard, so it's also just going to be a very free plus at the end of the day. But just one of each. I don't really want to see these ever in my opening hand, especially if I'm going second into a board. I just want to be able to see as many names as possible, so you can go ahead and just break the board. Especially if you open up like Shiren, Keldo, and a Rhino, you're probably just winning that game. So it's really nice. Just run one of each. You don't really need more than this. The next thing I want to talk about is going to be how to clear these cards and how to use these cards effectively. So let's say in a hypothetical scenario, your opponent mills Keldo and a name, and then you mill 2 names and a Mudora off of like a Kelbeck effect. The way that this typically goes is that you'll use only one of your names, your opponent will use their name, you'll use your Mudora on their name and their Keldo and one other card. They'll use their Keldo on your 2 names usually, and then just some other card in the graveyard. And at that point, you're only trading one effect for their shuffleback, and then you get rid of that shuffleback. So they don't have good odds of being able to mill that later on, which is really nice too. Typically, if you mill 2 different names and then a shuffleback is not present in the graveyard, I'll usually use both of the names effects because of that way you can play around the Bystials and at least you get 1 fusion that turn, which a lot of times if you're in a really big grind in the mirror match, you're only ever really getting the chance to fusion someone once in a turn anyway. So that's something that's really important to just note. If you can go for both the names and get a Kiklos on board, that's huge enough. And especially if you're able to just like get a Merly engrave as well, you'll try to fuse on your opponent's turn by using like Elf, bring back Merly, mill 3, or using like a Havness, mill 3. And that's why like Scream's really important too, because you want to make sure you can mill as much as possible on both turns, so you have the chance to at least get to more fusion summons. Because there's going to be a moment where you're going from like 1 fusion summon to turn to like all 3, and that's when that person's really in the driver's seat of the game. But it's really important to just go ahead and clear these one at a time. A lot of people are trying to use Silent Graveyard. I really don't like that card. I'd rather see everyone just play like Bell, because these cards are going to be the optional quick effects, so you can always Bell these. These are not going to be able to be chain blocked. Bell is overall very good, because a lot of the decks that are running Silent Graveyard are going to be rogue decks, and they can't really afford to be pitching cards out of their hand either, so I think that Bell is going to be the most efficient to be using right now. But overall, these cards are really strong. You just got to really understand how to just pick them out of the grave one at a time. And then you're just using one name at a time. And then when these aren't present, you use both names to play around a Bystial. And I think that's going to be the most effective way to at least be able to play around these cards and be able to clear these cards and bait these cards as well. So the next thing I want to talk about is going to be the Zombie World package. This package is insane and overperformed for me yesterday against Dragonlink, the Mirror, Fluanderies. It's really crazy against the Mirror, because if you set up your full board and your opponent tries to use the name in the graveyard, you just chain Banshee, activate Zombie World, and then they have to use cards from their hand or make a Garura. And that's absolutely absurd, because at that point your opponent just loses so much card advantage, and this is so strong because in the mirror match you really do just need card advantage. So this is something that's really nice against Fluanderies. Of course, this is like the most crazy card against Fluanderies. They literally cannot play the game. And then against Dragonlink, if you're playing against the deck that has like a lot of Bystials in it, and then they have like the small rocket engine, when they go to like summon a monster and go into the striker, they can't when they're under Zombie World. And so this is overall just a very solid package to play. I just play 1-in-1 and it's still really effective, because if you do mill Zombie World, of course, you can just shuffle it back and then you use Banshee whenever you want to. Then you also play Beatrice. So you have a really nice play line to be able to get to Banshee as well. So I think this is really necessary in the deck right now, and it's something that you should be highly considering, especially with the amount of flu that we're seeing nowadays. The next thing I want to talk about is going to be Perlerino. You have to prioritize this card no matter what you're playing against. This card is so important. The ability to go Keldo, shuffle back a name, and then Perlerino pop anything you want just at will is really important. Perlerino, just being able to make your monsters gain 500, Scream being able to make your opponent's monsters lose 500 is just such a big difference as well in the mirror match, because you don't have to worry about clearing cards via Kaleido Shuffle. You don't have to worry about like clearing cards with the Zeus effect. You can just go ahead and battle phase over cards, which is huge, because at that point you don't have to worry about a lot of things triggering in the graveyard, and it honestly just makes so much of a difference. This card alone just so good, and also just being able to get that free search too. There's so many things about this card that you just want it on your board. Usually in the mirror match, the person who establishes Perlerino is probably winning that game. It really is just that important, and that's why I run 40 cards, because I want to make sure that I see this card as much as possible. So the next thing too, talking about Bystials, the deck list that won Dortmund did play 9. I think that the max that you should run in the main deck is going to be 6. This is usually the count that you'll see. I really do like running 6. I think that these cards are just absolutely broken. If you see 2 going into the mirror match going second, typically you just win that as well. These cards just being able to net so much free advantage and being able to just bait so many names in the graveyard. If your opponent doesn't want their name banished, usually you can bait out the Keldo to go ahead and shuffle back their name from the graveyard, and then it just opens up your opponent to get talented, which is even crazier. So this card alongside talents is just going to be one of the most broken things that you can have, because again, your opponent doesn't want to have less of a chance to mill later on, so they're going to go ahead and just shuffle back into the deck. They don't want you to summon the Bystial either, so you just get so much free advantage from using Bystials, and they really do progress your game state so very much. So main decking 6 of these, typically it's 3 Magnemite, 2 Druid Worm, and 1 Saronir. You want to do that just so you have multiple names that you can see in your hand, and if you see like double Druid Worm, it's not the end of the world, but I definitely want to be able to see like a Druid and a Magnemite, or like a Magnemite and a Saronir instead. These cards are just really insane. They should be somewhere in your deck. I've seen a lot of people go main decking 3 and siding 3, but I definitely just want to main deck 6 of these. They're so very good. Talking about the really important play line in the deck, this is going to be your bread and butter play that you want to do every single time. And that's if you're in a really bad position, you don't have any names available to you. You can actually just go dark, target your opponent's Magnemite in their graveyard. Realistically, any dark, but if they have Magnemite, you're going to be targeting that. Use that Magnemite effect so you can get free advantage in the end phase. And then you can go into your Sprite Elf or Sprind to be able to get access to Merly, either via the mill 3 on your opponent's turn, or you can go ahead and send it off of your Sprind and then get a free fusion summon. This actually got me back into the game yesterday because I was playing from behind. I just didn't really have a lot of gas to go with. I baited my opponent's Keldo, and then from there I was able to summon Dark, summon back to Magnemite, search Druis in the end phase, go Sprind, dump Merly, and then I got my Kit effect, and then Kit effect was able to bring back the Merly, mill 8 cards, and at that point I hit my other name, was able to make the Rukalos, and I was just able to win from there out. And it was really nice. This is just a really solid play line that you can do. Puts you very far ahead in card advantage as well, especially when you're already playing from behind. So I like this one a lot, and this is something that you should definitely memorize whenever you're going into your next tournament. So the next thing I want to talk about too is going to be Asa. This card essentially does the same playline if you target something like a Kelbeck, but this card is also very important if you want to bait out a Keldo or a Medora, because if you target one of those and they don't use the effect, then you just summon it and make a free Dweller, or they have to use the effect at that point so that you don't get the free summon. So this card does really well in the deck right now. It's very 50-50 on who's playing Asa and who's not, but at the same point, I think that's a really interesting tech choice right now, especially if we start seeing Fenrir's in the graveyard. Also very good. I want to talk about this package as well, Diviner and Baron. A lot of people were like, is this mandatory? Do we have to run this? And I don't really think that you do. I didn't run it yesterday, but I do think that it has a lot of promise to it. I think that running one Diviner is probably going to take place in my one Heartbeat or even my second Scream. I think that's really nice just people to get the free send of a Keldo or a Medora. Obviously, you can mill your mill 5s if you're playing against like Rogue, but most of the time you just want to make sure that you have a Keldo or a Medora in the graveyard as well. The Barons are really nice play against things like Rogue, but at the same point, I don't really think that these are mandatory, but they are very strong. I think just running Diviner, though, is even better, because at that point, you can send a Keldo, it becomes a level 6, you can summon a Bystial, and then overlay for Beatrice, so you can just have whatever you need at that point, whatever name you need to get to, or if you want to send like a Heartbeat to get back a Crime. There's so many different things that you can do with Diviner at that point. So I think that this is a really cool package. I really don't think that it's mandatory, but I do think that it's very strong in the deck at least. But I do want to talk about my list from the regional. Again, on that one Agido, running 2 Druids and 1 Saronir, the triple Magnemite. Herald the Orange Light actually is such an amazing card. I was able to Orange Light a D-Shifter twice, which was pretty crazy. It's always very good to see. Orange Light being able to send Mudora or the Keldo is also just one of those things that makes Call by the Grave just terrible, because at that point they go chain Call by target Orange Light, and you just shuffle back your Orange Light with Mudora or Keldo, and it's like really funny. And it's another reason why we don't see Call by the Grave as much anymore. As far as the rest of the list goes, though, we do see Droplet in the sideboard. I cited it in a couple times, but never saw it. So I guess it just never really mattered. But at the same point, in theory, it's very strong. I did want to run Dogwoods instead, but at the same time, I wanted something for things like Fluanderies. I was setting in like 12 cards against Flu. I was setting in Gammas, Droplets, Twins, the Zombie World package. I was making sure I won that matchup. And every single time I had to play against Flu, I did win. So that was really strong too, having a really big side for Flu. Definitely important, being able to take out those Bystials, those Shufflebacks. I did leave in one of the Shufflebacks though, just because I wanted to make sure that I had the free pop with the Perlerino, or if I needed to recycle any resources, that I had the option for that. Then also in the extra deck, I am playing 2 Kit, and that's because Kashtira Unicorn's getting a lot more popular right now. And if you're running just 1 Kit, then you just get punished really hard by your Kit getting banished face down. So that's really bad. So make sure that you are on 2 Kit just so you don't lose to something random like that. Shout out to Justin Persmersky for telling me about that before the regional. Went back to playing 2, which has just been really nice. I was at the regional 2, and somebody banished my Kit because he used the Bystial to target it, and they weren't expecting me to play the second one, so when I summoned the second Kit, it caught them really off guard. So that was really nice too. Whenever there's a notion that people only play 1 or 2 of a card, it's actually really important to use that to your advantage, especially if you're playing the opposite number of what's known. Because at that point, if you play two, then a lot of people would just prioritize getting rid of the first one, then you're able to summon the second one and really go off. So the last thing too is I run the Underworld Goddess because you really want to just have an out for the Avermax. I didn't get it summoned on me one time yesterday, but it's better to have something than better to not have something. So Underworld overall just very strong. It also came up against just in side matches that I was playing just because I was trying to learn like what Naturia did. And on the lunch break, I was playing with my friend and he was showing me the deck, and actually Underworld in that matchup came up as well. I'm interested to see if I'm ever going to run against that deck at like a tournament soon, but it's definitely an interesting one to look out for. I know that it did pretty okay at the YCS this weekend, so definitely make sure that you read some of those Naturia cards and just make sure that you are prepared for that matchup because it is really interesting. It's not super bad, but it's definitely interesting. As far as the overall list goes, I probably wouldn't change much. Definitely Diviner over the Heartbeat or the Second Scream, but overall I think that the list performed really well. Round 2 I lost to time, and then round 9 I just lost, unfortunately, and that knocked me out at the end of the day. But I think that the list performed really well, and this is something that I'm going to be playing a lot moving forward. I do hope that you enjoyed today's video. If you haven't already joined my Discord, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, definitely go ahead and do so, all down in the description below. And then if you want a coaching session over on Metafy, definitely go ahead and hit me up in Discord, and we'll talk about which session works better for you. And I hope that everyone has a wonderful day, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Thank you.